I'm Polly Warren and welcome to the Positive Perimenopause podcast. This is the place for some positive inspiration to help you through the rollercoaster ride of perimenopause. I truly believe that with the right support, knowledge and wellness tools, you can feel your best yet, because I'm learning this life phase can be a truly exciting and often pivotal time of life. With every episode, my mission is to support and empower you to own your menopause, because it's time to start taking care of the most important person, and yes, that's you. So thank you for being here and sharing your time with me. Now let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. How are you all doing? Hope you've had a really good week. Last week, actually, I did have a very good week, a better week than I've had in a long time. And one of the things which happened last week, which I was super proud of, was that I completed a 4-month training I've been doing to become a hypnotherapist. Now, this training has been really incredible. It was through Mind Valley. I don't know if you know Mind Valley, but it's an incredible platform of self-development. And one of the people doing the training was Paul McKenna, who's a pretty big name in hypnosis. You may well have heard of him. Anyway, I absolutely loved the course and learnt so much. And now I'm a certified hypnotherapist. And already I've been using and practicing some of the skills with my coaching clients, which I have at the moment. And honestly, it's been totally blowing my mind how powerful this stuff is. So one client last week, for example, described a seismic shift since we've been working together. And another said that she could really feel a shift in a belief that she's been holding on to since she can remember. And we did some hypnosis and she said the following week, my goodness, I can't believe I definitely feel like something's changed, something's different. So, and that's going to really help her now move forwards. It really is such an amazing tool to have in my coaching toolkit, and it can help with so many things. So things like confidence, creating more confidence, anxiety. It's brilliant for anxiety, trying to get more motivation, but lots of things like that. But also, I've been trained to help, which I haven't really done a huge amount of yet. So I'm looking to keep practicing things like phobias, compulsion, so giving up smoking, things like that. So I'm super excited to keep using these tools, which I can already see are having incredible results. So if you know that perhaps you could be feeling better or your life could be better in some way, or you know that some of the changes that you really need to make to help you through this roller coaster ride of perimenopause, but you're finding committing to doing those new things, whether they're diet, lifestyle, whatever they might be. And if you're ready for change, come and get in touch with me, because honestly, these tools can be so transformational. We only have one life, and so it's important to make the most of it. Health for me is always the first step, because what have we got without our health? It totally has an impact on everything. But then so also is feeling fulfilled and finding your purpose and doing the things which light you up and make you feel good. They're all linked. So if you feel like you could do with a bit of shifting in your life so that you can do all of those things, then please do get in touch with me. So this week, it's another solo episode with just me. And actually, I was inspired to do this episode because of 2 very menopausal moments I had a couple of weeks ago. Now, both of these moments, I have to admit, led me down the path of some serious, bad, negative self-talk. And even though I generally feel pretty good and I feel really in control of my menopausal journey, I mean, of course, I still have plenty of moments of brain fog, moments of anxiety, grumpy moments, and moments when sometimes my brain chatter does start to get the better of me. So in this episode, I want to talk to you about that brain chatter, that itty bitty shitty committee, as I like to call it. It's those voices that keep you up in the middle of the night, that talk to you in a way that you probably never talk to anybody else. Those voices that make us sabotage our good intentions, that then make us beat ourselves up about not doing the thing. And basically they just make us feel like utter shit. And as we go through perimenopause, these voices can become much, much louder, and we can become much more anxious. I know of many people who start to get panic attacks, and this often is due to our hormone levels. So, for example, dips in estrogen can actually cause the heart palpitations. So when estrogen is high, it helps to dilate our blood vessels, but when it dips, it constricts them, which is why we get those heart palpitations. But also, let's not forget that progesterone, which also dips and is often the first hormone to dip as we start to go through perimenopause. Progesterone is really connected to GABA, which is our calming neurotransmitter. And this is one of the big reasons we get this sort of menopause anxiety. So our hormones do have a part to play, but there are so many things that we can do to take control of these thoughts as well. So my intention is, by the end of this episode, you'll have some strategies which I use and which you too can use, which will not only help your itty bitty shitty committee shut the fuck up, sorry, I needed to swear there, but which will also help you to feel more in control of the thoughts in your head so that you can have more control over what you think about rather than be a slave to your thoughts. So, a couple of weeks ago, I'm embarrassed to say that I let down two people really badly, and both of them were my fault. So the first was a brand new client. It was her first session working with me, and we'd spent time already putting our 12 sessions into our diaries, making sure that we could make the dates. Yet somehow, I really don't know how, but I had put our first session for the following week than we had agreed. So when the day it came, which was meant to be our first session, I had already organised something else to be in that time. So I was in another meeting, and my client turned up on Zoom where I was meant to be. And of course, I wasn't there. I was in this other meeting, totally oblivious that my poor client was left worrying, thinking something awful had happened to me. I mean, it's the worst possible start to a client relationship. Someone who chose to work with me, which is a big deal, to trust me for 12 weeks, and I don't turn up to our first session. So you can imagine, when I came out of this meeting and I saw an email from this client to ask me if I was okay because she felt that something awful had happened, honestly, my heart sank. I checked back at all our messages and I realised I'd totally ballsed up. And of course, I felt terrible. So I phoned her. She was incredible. She was so amazing, so understanding, and so relieved that I was still alive and nothing awful had happened. But I still felt dreadful about it. And off went that shitty committee. It went off into overdrive. You can imagine, blah, blah, blah. You're so crap. You're disorganized. What will she think? Why would anyone want to work with you after this? I wouldn't be surprised if you cancelled. I won't bore you with the extent of my brain chatter. Needless to say, it went off in there. Now, before I tell you what saved me from this chatter spiraling totally out of control, because thankfully it didn't, I want to dive in a little bit more to this negative self-talk. So we all have negative thoughts, and a lot of these negative thoughts are automatic thoughts. Now, there's a really good acronym for these automatic negative thoughts, which is called ANTS. So automatic, A, negative, N, thoughts, T, ANTS. So we have these ants in our brain. Oh my goodness, I don't know if you can hear my dog snoring, but he's snoring suddenly very loudly. So I do apologise if you can hear that. So we all have these negative thoughts, and they can come into our mind automatically in response to a particular situation or a trigger. So these ants came into my mind straight away when I realized that I had ballsed up this call, this session. But often these thoughts are not real. They're distorted, they're unrealistic, they are not the truth. So examples of these ants might include thoughts such as, I'm not good enough, nobody likes me, I'm a failure. And of course, these thoughts are all exaggerations. They are generalizations. Of course, nobody hates, not everybody hates you. You're definitely not a failure. You are good enough. They are not true. So these thoughts often, they come with no conscious intention or effort, and they can become really difficult to control or to let go of. And ultimately, if they are thought again and again, then they lead to the negative emotions such as, anxiety, frustration, anger, sadness. And because our thoughts affect how we feel, and how we feel affects our behavior and the actions we take, they affect everything that we do. So where do these ants come from? Well, they mainly come from what we kind of call our ego. Now, I did this great training a couple of years ago, which was all about positive intelligence. And these negative thoughts, otherwise known as our ego, were described as the saboteurs, which I think is a brilliant description of them because they're always there trying to sabotage all our good intentions. So they are these voices in our heads that generate these negative emotions in the way that we go about our everyday life. So they represent kind of automated patterns in our minds for how to think, how to feel, how to respond. And they are what cause us most of our stress, most of our anxiety, a load of self-doubt and frustration. And ultimately, they make us really unhappy. They sabotage everything, our well-being, our relationships, our performance. So in this training, these saboteurs were given names. So I really like this because I could just really relate to it. It just made so much sense. So the master saboteur is the judge. Now, this judge, the judge is the universal saboteur that affects everyone. It's the one that beats you up repeatedly over your mistakes, over any shortcomings you have. The judge also warns you obsessively about risks you might be in the future. The judge is the one that wakes you up in the middle of the night worrying, gets you fixated on what is wrong with others or what is wrong with your life. The judge also activates your other saboteurs and can cause much of your stress and unhappiness. And it's really that judgy side of us. And the opposite of judgment, by the way, is curiosity, which is why I'm constantly saying to my clients, to everyone, when you notice any of your negative behavior or your negative thoughts, always notice them with curiosity, not judgment, because curiosity is the complete opposite of judgment. Okay, so this judge, our judge, has 9 accomplice saboteurs. And the judge works with at least one or maybe more of these accomplice saboteurs to hijack your mind and cause most of your setbacks. So have a listen, see if any of these seem familiar to you. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link in the show notes of the Positive Intelligence website, which is really worth having a look at because you can read the individual descriptions of each of these saboteurs, and I'm sure you'll recognize bits of them in you. So there is the avoider. So that's if you're a big procrastinator. The controller. So that's if you like to kind of control things and control other people. The hyperachiever. That's kind of the perfectionist. Then there's the hyper rational, the hyper vigilant, the pleaser. I think a lot of us probably have the pleaser, the restless, the stickler, and the victim. So you can also on that page, you'll see at the bottom, there's a saboteur assessment which you can do, which will help you discover which are your most dominant saboteurs. So I'll put all of those links in the show notes. So for me, when I did this a couple of years ago, the pleaser was right up there, as was the hyper achiever. That's kind of, that perfectionist, which I know I've got. So that's just a really interesting way to just kind of become aware of where you kind of lean towards in terms of these negative thoughts. So why do we have these negative thoughts? What actually is going on? So there are many reasons, really. One of them is to do with cognitive bias. Really annoyingly, our brains are wired on negative information, and they're wired to interpret ambiguous information in a negative way. So this is mainly because us humans have evolved to be more sensitive to negative experiences as a survival mechanism. So, but when we're able to pay attention to potential threats and danger in our environment, it helps us to avoid harm and to stay safe. And as we've evolved, that has always been the main key driver for survival, really. But unfortunately, that leads to a tendency to perceive situations in a negative light, even when there's no real evidence to support these negative interpretations. So, for example, rather than me finding any sort of positive kind of automatically about me ballsing up my calendar the other week, I immediately went for the negative. That is my negative cognitive bias. But also, let's not forget, any kind of negative experiences in childhood, any traumatic experiences in the past, these can also contribute to our negative thoughts. So many of us have been told off as a child, and particularly in those very early years, up to sort of 7 years old, we make meaning out of those occasions. Not that our parents or the people who told us off meant any harm by them, but quite often we might kind of turn that into, I'm not good enough. Oh dear, I better now not speak up, or I need to kind of keep quiet. And that stays with us. And unfortunately, until we address it and realize that it's not true when we grow up, it can lead to a sort of a persistent negative outlook on life and a tendency to interpret situations in more of a negative way and fuel these negative thoughts. And also, there are just sometimes those people who are more glass half empty rather than glass half full. And that is probably because of previous experiences as well. And the problem is, when we think the same negative thoughts over and over again, what happens is that they do become a belief. And then those beliefs become ingrained into us and start to dictate how we behave and also how we feel. And if we feel a certain way for a period of time, what then happens is that it soon becomes a personality trait. So if you start to think about, oh God, someone's really irritating, and then it starts to, you start to feel those irritations. You're constantly irritated. And then if you're irritated for day after day, month after month, soon it's a personality trait. You're just one of those people who's very touchy and gets irritated really easily. So we've got to remember that these automatic negative thoughts, these ants, are not always accurate reflections of reality. So what can we do about them? So how can we overcome these ants? Well, the first step is awareness. And I talk about awareness a lot, I know, but it is so important. So it's about becoming aware of the ants in our brain, in our mind. It's about becoming conscious of your thoughts. It's about catching yourself and noticing what's going on in your mind. And once you catch yourself thinking the thought, then you can ask yourself if that thought is actually true. Is there any evidence to support the thought? Or is it based on assumptions? Or is it based on cognitive biases? I mean, you may well be thinking, yeah, right. What the hell do you mean, Polly? Is it really that easy? Okay, as human beings, what makes us different is our consciousness, it's our awareness. So it's the ability that we have to notice what we're thinking. So if you shut your eyes and you notice your breathing, that noticing part of you is your consciousness. It's your spirit, your soul, whatever you want to call it. Now, for many of us, we get so wrapped up in the day to day of our physical life that we forget about this consciousness, but we all have it. And all we have to do is retrain ourselves to start noticing it again and to use it, because this is how you can regain some sort of control over the negative mental chatter. Now, I'm not going to say that you're never going to have mental chatter again, because that's not possible. We all have a zillion thoughts. Well, in fact, we don't have a zillion. We have apparently between 60,000 thoughts a day. You've heard me say this before, I'm sure. So 60,000 thoughts a day. And of those thoughts, 70 to 80% of them are negative. That's a lot, isn't it? And about 90 to 95% of those are repeated day in, day out. Now, that's a lot of thoughts and a lot of negative thoughts. But by learning to recognize and challenge these thoughts, it's totally possible to develop a more positive outlook and improve our overall mental health and well-being. So let's go back and have a look at how I managed to stop my negative thoughts take control after I ballsed up this client's first session. Well, when I was beginning to dwell on all the negatives of the situation, thankfully, because I've been working on training my awareness for a while now, I was able to interrupt the negative downward spiral and to start and notice my thoughts. And I could notice then that I was about to spiral into a deep negative hole. Now, the important thing to note here is that building awareness does take practice, but it doesn't take long to build if you practice a little bit every day. So one way you can start building awareness straight away today is, and I've done this myself, I have told lots of my clients have done this and it works. So is to set an alarm on your phone, which I imagine you have with you most of the time. Set an alarm on your phone to go off at regular intervals throughout the day. So, I mean, that even if you're in a really busy office, you could just put it on vibrate, put it in your pocket. So when it goes off, so that could be every half an hour or every hour, whatever kind of works for you. Obviously, the more frequent, the better. But when the alarm sounds, just notice where your thoughts are. Now, they may well be positive, which is great. Celebrate that. They may well be super focused on an activity you're doing. Great. Celebrate that as well. Or they may well be ruminating and dwelling on something negative or worrying about something. So by setting the alarm, you're building your awareness muscle. So it's a bit like building your biceps with weights in the gym. The more you do it, the stronger the muscle will become. And you'll start to notice that you're noticing your thoughts more just automatically without having to be reminded by the timer. So give it a go. I really do invite you to have a go because it does work. So once I'd noticed my negative thoughts the other day spiraling out, and I really did notice that I was beginning to ruminate on how rubbish I was, I managed to stop that kind of momentum from building anymore. I was able to say to myself and to my thoughts, hold on a minute, what is going on here? Are these thoughts actually true? Or am I just catastrophizing? Now, this client had already been so incredibly understanding. We already had a session scheduled for the following week. She hadn't cancelled it. So I was thinking, okay, it's up to me now to let it go. So instead of dwelling on the negative aspects of the situation, I tried to reframe it and search for a better thought, something just a bit more positive. Now, it's totally unrealistic to try and pluck an amazingly super positive thought from nowhere when you're just not feeling it. So it's always better to try and find a feeling thought which is just slightly more positive. So for me, I started to think about how amazingly understanding my new client was, because it had really struck me how this is the exact kind of client I want to work with. Someone who totally gets it, someone who gets me, and just how lovely they were. And that just made me feel really happy that I'm attracting amazing clients, people I really want to work with. And so it's about looking for alternative perspectives and trying to find the silver lining in difficult situations. This will interrupt the negative thought. Now, because our thoughts determine how we feel, it's highly likely that with these negative thoughts, with these ants, you will have some connected feelings. So for me, I was definitely feeling anxious, frustrated, irritated with myself. Now, this isn't about masking over our feelings and being toxic in our positivity, because that's something else altogether. We need to feel our feelings, but what we don't want is to get stuck in them. We want to move through them. Our emotions and our feelings are our most tangible sign to where we're at in that particular moment. And very simply, when we feel more positive emotions, we are totally in alignment with who we are. So we are in alignment with our body and our consciousness or our soul or our spirit, whatever you want to say. And when we're feeling more negative emotions, we're out of alignment with who we are. And that is why we're feeling not right, why everything feels a little bit funky. So when you notice you're feeling a negative emotion, what you want to do and to ensure firstly is that you allow space for whatever emotion is there, and then detach from the thought feeding the emotion. So I want to just share with you a process which you can begin to use so you have some real tangible tools to navigate the current moment when you catch yourself feeling particularly negative emotion. Okay, so step one, just acknowledge how you're feeling and accept it without judgment. So, okay, I am noticing anger. Now here, the important thing is just try to avoid saying, I'm anxious, I'm angry. So in that sense, you're really fusing yourself with the anger, with the anxiety. Instead, it's going to work much better for you to say, I'm noticing anger, or I'm noticing anxiety, or here's anxiety again. So this kind of approach really helps to create separation from you and the feeling you just happen to be experiencing. You are not that feeling, you're just happening to experience it. Step two is ask yourself, what does it feel like in my body? So just take a moment and notice physically where you're experiencing the emotion. So is your heart pounding, or is it like a tightness in your chest, or have you got tears in your eyes? Then, now this is what we use quite a lot in EFT and tapping as well. Has that feeling a very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you. Got a shape? Has it got a colour? What's the temperature of it? Try and really describe it. And it might sound a bit strange, but when you start to think about it in those terms, quite often it's quite easy to give it a colour. So just stay focused on those feelings, on those sensations, be curious about them and take your time, be with that feeling and just explore it. Now, the last step 3, is then breathe into it. So take 2 deep breaths and completely empty your lungs each time. Then as you breathe in again, push your breath into the physical sensation as if you're kind of allowing the space around the feeling to kind of grow and to expand. So think of it like you want to create even more room and space for that energy to be within, even if it's negative. We're just allowing what's there. And what you're doing really is paying attention to the physical sensation in the moment, not the thoughts and the story in your head. So you actually place your attention on the very emotion you are normally probably inclined to resist. And when you allow it, it totally changes the experience. And ultimately, it gives you so much more control. You don't need to fix your feelings. They are allowed to be there. What we just don't want to fuel them with more thoughts. So your goal is to be okay with that feeling being there. And amazingly, most of these feelings, they don't last more probably than about 30 minutes. If we do this, often they can last about 10 minutes or even less. So just imagine your emotions simply as waves in the sea. They'll go up and down, but ultimately they will break. A lot of the time, we fear that we're ruminating or we're dwelling or we're sulking or whatever you want to call it. If we focus on that negative emotion, that's really more of an issue when we fuse with thoughts and stories in our head and keep feeding the emotion. So in this approach, you're focusing on the feeling and you're just simply allowing it to move through you. Negative emotions are not a problem. It's staying stuck in them, which is the problem. So as I said, EFT tapping is another brilliant tool for moving through emotions as well, which is what I helped to with my second menopausal moment of the week. So let me tell you about that one. Oh gosh, so my second menopausal moment of that week was very similar to the first. So I'd been really wanting to talk to this specialist menopause dietitian for a while. I've been following them on Instagram, and it'd taken quite a while to schedule a time in to record the episode for the podcast. And when the day came, I'd done all my prep. I was fully prepared. I kind of knew what I wanted to talk about. I was all ready to go. But in my head, for some reason, I had the time as 12:30, when in actual fact, it was 12 o'clock. I don't know why. And I was away from my computer, because normally I have reminders, but I was away from my computer at 12, so I didn't get the reminders. So when I came to my laptop at 12:30, and just before, about probably 20 past 12, and saw that it was meant to be 12, I was mortified. So I tried to get on the Zoom. The Zoom wasn't working, although I could see that this person was still there in the waiting room. So it was really stressful. Anyway, via email, I had to totally fess up and acknowledge that it was totally my fault. I felt so dreadful that I'd wasted this very busy person's time. And we did agree that it was probably best that we reschedule, because by this point it was about 20 to 1. Oh God. And again, this person, they was so understanding. They even said in such a sweet email, "Oh, I've done this so many times." And I bet they hadn't, but they were so sweet and said that. But obviously, immediately after, those voices in my head started up again in full force, as this was the second time that week that it had happened. So I'd completely convinced myself, I'd blown it with this person. They'd never want to do anything with me again, blah, blah, blah. Off it went. However, again, thankfully, maybe not as quickly this time. It probably took a bit longer, a good few hours, probably a whole afternoon actually, to stop those thoughts in their track. But as this time, it was a bit harder to find the reframe. Instead, this time I just had to try and make a conscious decision to let it go, to recognize that this ruminating just wasn't helpful, that the situation had passed. And they did say that they were going to reschedule, but they didn't do it straight away. So I was like, oh gosh, they're never going to reschedule. But I kind of had to trust that would happen. And guess what? They have rescheduled. We have a date in the diary, so it's all good. Staying in that negative thought pattern just wouldn't have achieved anything at all. And this time, because I just felt really stressed in my body, I really felt it in my chest, I decided I needed to tap. So I used EFT. Now, I really like tapping when I'm stuck in some negative emotions, some negative thought pattern, and particularly if there is that strong associated feeling. So for those who don't know much about EFT, it's an amazing brain hack which can override your stress response. Perfect in those moments when you're feeling really, really anxious, when you're feeling guilt, when you're feeling angry. I've got a whole episode on tapping. It's episode 40. So if you want to learn more, you can go and have a listen to that. But in a nutshell, the key to tapping is to talk out loud, or you can actually do it in your head as well, about the negative emotions and the negative thoughts. So you can start, there's a few ways you can do it. You can start by naming the emotion and finding its location in your body. So as I said before, you can give it a colour. So you could say something like this red anger in my belly, or this blue anxiousness in my chest, or this black heaviness on my shoulders. And it's really, it really is easy to get the hang of. And it really works to shift your negative emotions so that you can feel calmer and ultimately happier. But it's also a brilliant way to interrupt those negative thoughts, because what you can do, you can go, if you're feeling it in that moment, you can go straight into the tapping and you can say those thoughts which are going around in your head out loud whilst tapping. And tapping just really helps take the sting out of them. So I did start noticing that I had a real tightness in my chest. It kind of felt tight and sharp. So I started off on the karate point, which is kind of on the side of your hand, started going, even though I have this sharp, tight anxiousness in my chest, I love and accept myself anyway. So I did that a couple of times. And then I went through the different points in my body, saying things like, I can't believe I did it again. Why am I so disorganized? What's wrong with me? I'm so embarrassed. So basically talking out loud when I went to a different point, all the things I was thinking. And what's amazing about it is that first it gives you somewhere to vent, and then naturally you sort of start to move to more neutral and then into more positive statements. So I started to kind of go, okay, it's not the end of the world. No one died. And they were so understanding, and they did say they'd reschedule. So I'm going to trust that. So it's just saying your thoughts out loud. And after a few rounds, honestly, I felt so much calmer. I was yawning, which is always a great sign because it kind of means you're releasing that sort of negative stuck energy. You can yawn. Sometimes you might burp. It's kind of just letting out that kind of that energy. So it's a really good way of letting those emotions go, and a really good way of trying to reframe a situation. It works. So give it a go. Okay, so there's some tools you can use. You can also, what else can you do? You can also practice things like mindfulness. This is a great way to help you pay attention to that present moment without judgment. So it's really, again, training that awareness. And the best thing about mindfulness is that you can practice it anytime. A really good time to practice it is when you're doing those everyday, slightly boring or very boring, mundane activities. So things like, brushing your teeth is a great example of doing it. So if you're aware, you've got to remind yourself to be mindful of brushing your teeth, but, really focusing on every single tooth that you're brushing and just being in that moment. Folding laundry is another great one. You can really use your senses. So when we're mindful, if you can bring all your senses into it, it can really help. So if you're doing laundry, you can smell the laundry. You can feel the different textures. You can use your eyes to really notice the colours. You can listen for any sound as perhaps you fold a shirt, for example. So this will build that attention muscle, and also it will release stress as well and make a mundane job actually quite enjoyable. Washing up is another good one. You can really kind of get into the feeling of the water, the sound it makes, what can you see, the bubbles. I couldn't talk about any of this as well without really talking about meditation. So I did talk before about setting your phone alarm. That's a really good way to start training your awareness. Mindfulness is another way of training your awareness. And so is meditation. Now, I know some people think, oh God, I can't fit another thing into my day. What is meditation? Isn't it where you just sit cross-legged and om for hours? Meditation is not any of those things. It's very similar to mindfulness. It's probably one of the best ways to help you observe your ants without getting caught in them. So the key here is practice. Okay, meditation is a practice. And again, if you can do this consistently, you'll find that you're more able to notice your ants, your automatic negative thoughts. You'll notice them more frequently, and also you'll be able to more easily detach from a potentially triggering situation just before it happens, so that you become less reactive and instead you can respond in a way that you're in control of rather than react and say something you regret. I've noticed this to be so helpful, particularly when dealing with my teenagers. Now, if you haven't ever meditated before, then, as I said, the setting a time on your phone exercise is a great place to start. And maybe consider as well investing in an app, something like Headspace or Calm or Insight Timer. It's not about, as I said, sitting cross-legged for hours. Start with 2 minutes if that's all you've got and build from there. I know on Headspace you can choose how long you want. So the meditation could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 50 minutes, 20 minutes. And just to reiterate here, meditating is not about having a totally clear mind, because that is pretty much impossible. It's about becoming aware of your thoughts, about noticing your thoughts, which will help you observe negative thoughts without getting caught up in them. Headspace have this brilliant little video, which is about a bit like sitting by the side of the road, watching your thoughts go by in the traffic, watching the lorries go by. That's a bit like your thoughts. You're just noticing them, watching them. Or it's like noticing your thoughts in clouds, watching them drift by. Yoga is also another brilliant practice to do, because that's all about using the mind and the body together. And it involves, again, a focus on the present moment, which helps you become more self-aware, which can help you recognize and challenge negative thought patterns. As we've said, by paying attention to these thoughts and acknowledge them, you can learn to let them go more easily. Okay, on that, in terms of letting thoughts go once you acknowledge them, there are many ways you can do this. Now, one way is to write the thought, all the thoughts, many thoughts, down on a piece of paper. And then this is quite cathartic. You can either tear it up, you could screw it up, you could burn it, just to get rid of the thoughts. Once they've gone, they've gone. Or as you could do the floating away on the cloud, or placing them on a leaf and imagine them being taken away down a stream. And also, let's not forget good old journaling, which can be really, really helpful way of getting the thoughts out of your mind and onto paper. And also just make sure you're doing activities that make you feel good. So exercise is brilliant. Anything you absolutely love, spending time with people you love, it can really help shift your focus away from negative thoughts. Doing the things which light you up definitely break the cycle. And finally, if you are having regular negative thoughts and really struggling to break that pattern and you're getting stuck in them, get support. It's okay to ask for help if you feel these negative thoughts are affecting your mental health. So talk to a friend or a family member, or seek out a professional to help you and to just help you develop some strategies for coping, because there are so many things you can do. I hope you have found this episode useful. I use all of these strategies and they have been a total game changer for me. Remember, start small and build from there. So just to recap what we've talked about. So I've got 10 points here, which we talked about. So 1, set a timer on your phone at regular intervals and start noticing where your thoughts are. 2, write your thoughts down on a piece of paper and get rid of it, or let your thoughts drift by or float away. 3, reframe your thoughts to a slightly better feeling thought. 4, remember to feel your feelings, but don't get stuck in them. Tapping can be super helpful. 5, practice mindfulness by doing some mundane activities. 6, download a meditation app, something like Headspace or Calm. 7, try and do some yoga or move your body. 8, try EFT. Oh, I've already said that. Oh, well, I've doubled up on that one. 9, do activities which make you feel good. And 10, remember to ask for help if you need it. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with me, as I know how busy you are. If you have enjoyed this episode, why not share it with a friend who you think may benefit from it too, or even share it on social media and tag me in, of course. I would love to see that. And also remember, you can rate, subscribe and review over on the platform you listen, but you can actually write a review on Apple Podcasts, which would be so amazing. And lastly, if you're interested in working with me, you can sign up for a free 15-minute chat to find out more, see if we're a good fit, ask me questions. All the links are in the show notes. Thank you again.